Hello, everybody. Jason Sarney here with my PhinManiac crew. We are live officially, and we are ready to kick off the 2021 season in about an hour. The Miami Dolphins are in Chicago, ready to face off against the Bears. And, we obviously know that a lot of star players might not be playing. We know that Xavier Howard, we know Byron Jones is not playing. Rookie Jalen Phillips will not be playing. But before going into an hour plus of all the particulars, without further ado, let's bring in some of the maniacs. We got Hussam Patel. How are you, brother?
Hey Jason, hey Chip, I'm doing well. I'm excited to finally see, Miami Dolphins football, even though it's the preseason. Look, preseason's important. We're going to be gauging the first couple drives for Tua Tagovailoa. We're going to be gauging this brand new offense live against, a different defense, a good Bears defensive line and a decent secondary. So I'm excited to see that. And, I really want to see this offensive line for the Dolphins because they've been struggling a little bit through training camp and through the joint practices. So maybe they can build upon the struggles, learn from it, and then actually play well.
Chip, how are you doing? Hussam, well said, of course. But Mr. Turner, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Jason. Thank you for having me on. Preseason first preseason game in 2 years, which is kind of nice. You'll, as Hussam said, you're not necessarily going to see a whole lot of reps from Tua. You're not going to see some of your bigger wide receiver names, not going to see some of your big cornerback names, but we already know the majority of what those folks can do. And it's really nice because what's cool is you'll always get some cool training camp stories. Years and years and years ago, that was Zach Thomas when he came on and basically made Jack Del Rio expendable. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of your little stories. I mean, we've got some interesting stories coming in at guard with international players. A lot of cool stuff could be going on. But of course, this biggest story is going to be Tua, whether he's in for 1 series, 2 series, a full quarter, whatever it might be. I cannot wait to see what goes on today.
I agree, Chip, and well said again. I'm very interested, when I actually saw the list of guys not playing, I don't get nervous because you're putting people on ice. There's no need to rush guys. And, of course, you don't need to see Xavier Howard today. You don't need to see Byron Jones, So I can't wait to see a Trill Williams on the wide receiver side. I can't wait to see Kirk Merritt and game speed against, game competition coverage and really see if he elevates. He needs to elevate. Lynn Bowden needs to be on point, meaning we can't see a drop. We can't see a silly push off or offensive penalty. We can't see really any mistakes from any of the lower tier wide receivers. That's where I want to start. But before that, I see that the chat room is really kind of filling up, and that's much, much appreciated because here at PhinManiacs, we really love all of you PhinManiac fans, Doll fans. We see Smart James 1981, who is a terrific Twitter personality. He does great work. One of the greatest people out there, Joy Elizabeth 05. You know her, one of the Buffalonians that I could talk nicely about because, we're all over the place, right, Hussam? I know you're a Florida boy, but you're with two outsiders. Chip, you're in Pennsylvania, as am I. But hello to my FinFan Buffalonians. I went to college there for many people know that. And I see Was Seminole 51. I think I know who that is. Surely.
Is Buffalonians the proper term? I know you went to college there, so you'd probably know. Is that... I have a different nickname for them entirely in general, but I mean, Buffalonians, we'll go with that. I think it's a good one.
Unless Joy wants to switch it up, I think Buffalonians is fair. Western New Yorkers, I've heard, is kind of.
I got you. I mean, as opposed to like Buffaloites or
definitely not ice. I've never
the special names I have for them.
We'll leave that for Bill's Dolphins.
Okay.
But I also think I see someone who I love from Twitter who always kind of requotes and quotes airplane lines. I think Was Seminole 51 is that individual. So looking forward to seeing Holland, he says. We're going to talk about
somebody real quick, Jason.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Chris right there. Chris, what's going on? At Ghost of Adam Gase on Twitter. That's my boy. What's up?
Oh, get out of here, really?
Yep.
Oh, I love that. I like matching up social media handles because I feel like everyone's, different
Scariest
names.
profile picture on Twitter, by the way, is the Ghost of Adam Gase.
But he's the
Scares
troll
the heck
dog,
out of me every time I see it. Yeah.
the nicest troll out there. I love him. Great account. But yeah, the chat room's filling up. We have a long time, relatively speaking, until kickoff. So I'll get to as many people as we can. Your questions, I'll run them down. We have Alex Dono joining the party in about a half hour. And he's one of the best. I love listening to him with football, with other sports, and pop culture. So we're going to pick his brain on some pop culture things right now. But right now, let's go into the wide receivers. I'm going to go to a question before we really dig deep. It is Smart James 1981. Great year. That is my birth year as well. Any reasons Hearns isn't playing? I think it isn't a lock to make a roster and need to show out. I want to bring in Hussam first. I agree wholeheartedly with James that he needs to show out based on the fact he opted out last year, and he's a veteran on the fringe. Hussam, what do you think?
Well, I do think with Miami's current depth of wide receivers, they're okay without Allen Hearns playing. Either A, they see what they like from Hearns in camp, or B, he's an eventual cut candidate, and Miami's trying to save him from injury and try to maybe trade him for, a fringe low-level pick in 2022, maybe a 6th round, maybe a 7th round. We know Chris Greer, he's always wheeling and dealing. So he could be making some calls to some wide receiver needed teams like the New Orleans Saints, like the Seattle Seahawks, like the Philadelphia Eagles. So you really don't know what's going to happen. But if I could, put my tongue onto my roof and say he could be a possible trade candidate.
I agree, Chip.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons that you're not going to see Allen Hearns playing as much is, again, because he's a known quantity. You know what you've got with Allen Hearns. He is a guy who's on the fringe of making the roster, in my opinion. I don't really think salary has anything to do with it at this point in time. So I really don't know that. I believe Allen Hearns's roster presence depends on the health of all of the other wide receivers. If he is a necessity, he's there, much in the same way I think that Isaiah Ford is. Because again, with Isaiah Ford, you know what you've got. So I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of them this preseason. I think you'll see some, obviously not today, but we'll see where that goes. But I believe if something happens, like if someone else goes down in camp, he's a good guy to have. He's fairly reliable. He's got very limited upside. He's a good possession receiver. You know what you got with Allen Hearns.
Well put. And how I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what you guys said, and I'm going to read a couple of comments here in the chat. We have Richard Calzo Jr. saying, cut Hearns right now. Don't even waste time. The thought process is similar with me because I don't see him on the 53. But here's what I see doing, and this is why Chris Greer is not alone. He's got staff. I'm assuming. I don't know, but I'm assuming everything really I go is off assumption. Why not call up the teams you mentioned, Hussam, and say, hey, listen, let's do a 5th round or a 7th round swap, in 2022, just do something. Just make some value instead of straight up cut. If all energy is exhausted, then cut him. Unless, Chip, you mentioned the injuries. You put him on ice because you know that quantity that he is. As you mentioned, the stock's there. You know what he is. And you don't need to kind of risk injury for your own sake or for his sake for other value elsewhere. So now let's talk about the injuries. We got a lot of wide receivers are out because they're banged up. Preston Williams is PUP. We have Devontae Parker not playing today. He's banged up. Will Fuller banged up, and he's got that 1-game suspension. And Albert Wilson, although he's been showing out in camp, much to many people's, a lot of people saw it coming. A lot of people are happy about it, but he is banged up, so we're not going to see him today. So we really got to talk about the 14 wide receivers that the Dolphins have. I want to bring up Preston Williams, but before I bring in some intel, I want to calm everybody down. I want to calm everyone down because he wasn't on the depth chart. So a lot of people were getting ready to sell in their stock of Preston. Do not do that. The reason being, I think it's going to be strategic in how they're handling these receivers with some suspension / injury / the ability to strategically put them either on PUP, injured reserve, what have you. We'll go deeper into that, but I want to hear about your overall thoughts, mainly on those fringe wide receivers, starting with, let's say, in addition to what we mentioned with Hearns, let's talk about Lynn Bowden Jr., massively important veteran for today, even if it's for a few series. Chip, we'll start with you. How important is it for Lynn Bowden Jr. today, and what do you see from him?
It is vitally important for Lynn Bowden to do well today, because I think he is in any danger of being cut. Like, he's not going to be a cut after the first game, I don't believe. But it's just that other receivers have shown marked improvement. You mentioned Albert Wilson before, and Albert Wilson has given every indication that he is the same Albert Wilson pre-2018 injury. He's finally back to where he was. You've obviously got Jalen Waddle. Will Fuller, you mentioned. I mean, you're not going to see a whole lot of him, but he's not in any danger of going anywhere. So Lynn Bowden is now officially in a fight for a roster spot on this team. He's not eligible for the practice squad. He's played too much in a regular season. So he needs to step up and say, through his play, hey, guys, I'm here too. Remember me from last year? I single-handedly took over one of the late games last year. I was the most reliable receiver on the field for it. This is who I am. We need to see something from him today, just because the other wide receivers in camp have raised the bar.
I agree wholeheartedly. Thoughts on Lynn Bowden, Hussam?
Oh, first off, I wanted to say shout out to the Ohana family there. What's up, everybody? Just wanted to give out a shout out. But actually, I'm going to piggyback off your Preston Williams take. We know how strategic this Miami Dolphins organization is when it comes to its players, when it comes to injury, and not really saying, what's going on with their players. With Lynn Bowden, I think, it's a similar approach to Preston Williams, where they're being strategic. They're not telling everybody the entire story. And I'm going to go with Omar Kelly on this take, but teams hide players in their roster spot and during camp, so other teams can't notice, the players which are doing good, which are doing bad. And I think Miami wants to keep Lynn Bowden Jr. in-house. They don't want to give away too much what they're trying to do. They don't want to give away what they're doing on offense. And look, I believe it was a couple of after practice pressers beforehand, I think maybe last week. And some reporter asked Lynn Bowden, what he thinks of this offense. And it's built for that entire wide receiver group. And that entire wide receiver group includes Lynn Bowden Jr. Lynn Bowden thrives off of short passes. He can do well in the deep game. He's fast. He's great in the wildcat. He can catch, he can run, and he can pass the ball too. So Lynn Bowden's value, I think he's valuable to this Dolphins organization and team because the offense has got to be mysterious. It's got to be fast. They got to do everything and anything, and Bowden gives them that. And, I said a couple weeks ago, it looks like he may be on the bubble. But then I thought about Omar Street, and I'm like, it makes sense. It makes sense as to why the Dolphins could be doing this. And that's my thoughts.
I love how you said the strategy stash him. I agree with that 1,000% because that's exactly why these rules are in place. It's like tax code. If you know how to read tax code, you can really get around some things and loopholes. So that's what a good front office does. And I think the Dolphins are doing that.
It's a very Belichick move. That's what I'm going to call it.
And look who we're comparing it to. You can compare yourselves or, your team's front office to organizations, and then you look at the comparisons, and then you can get happy or sad. And I think this progression is where we want it to be. And back to Bowden, he had a triple-double last year, if you know what I mean. With what I say that, I know that's a basketball term, but he had 3 statistics in which he had at least double figures. He had rushing yards, he had receptions, he had passing yards. He had a pass for 32 yards. He attempted 2. So he can do that wildcat quarterback or reverse throw, what have you. And, some other quick stats for Bowden, he also caught 28 passes for 211 yards, very quick hits, Chip, as you mentioned, and he carried the ball 9 times for 32 yards. So this is a guy who can be utilized in so many different ways. So if we don't see so much of him, Hussam, you made a very good point too. And now here we go. I know his name is being mentioned in the chat. I need a little bit of a drum roll, please, because the most popular receiver in the history of the Miami Dolphins to never score a touchdown. The Billy Martin of the Miami Dolphins. Cut. Brought in. Cut. Brought in. Traded. Cut. Brought in. Isaiah Ford, gang time, everybody. Hussam, where's the jersey? Do you have the number 20?
Nope. I don't even have the number 84.
You're a liar.
I don't.
Chip, talk to me about the strategic usage of Isaiah Ford. Does he have a chance at the 53?
Sure. Everybody's got a chance. No, realistically, I do believe he has a chance. The difficulty, again, is there's only so many spots that the Dolphins are going to use for wide receivers. Even if they use 7, that's kind of stretching it, it's going to come down to 2 or 3 different roster spots. But let's put it this way. I don't think there's any way in the world that you've got 4 names. You've got Isaiah Ford, you've got Alan Hearns. Actually, you're going to cut it down to 3 names. You're going to cut it down to Ford, Hearns, and Jakeem Grant. I don't think all 3 of those players make the 53. There's just no way. There's not enough room on the roster for it. I do believe Isaiah Ford can make this roster. He is clearly someone the Dolphins have on speed dial. I've said this before in a couple other podcasts. He's here, he's gone. He's here, he's gone. But the guy in general is a reliable receiver. He is a good route runner. He's not particularly fast. He is not extremely elusive, but he's going to run your routes. He knows the team very well, obviously, since he's been here 17 times. And he is going to give you everything he's got. He's clearly a favorite of the staff. So does he have a shot? Sure, he's got a shot. Do I promise you he's going to make the team? Absolutely not. But we'll see what develops over these next 3 weeks, next 3 preseason games, because I think he's another one who's got to show out.
I think with Isaiah Ford, as you said, we already know what kind of player he is. The Dolphins can rely on him to make some plays. Obviously, we know what happened in Buffalo. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty for Ford, and it wasn't pretty for the entire team, basically. If I want to bet some money, I would bet that Ford, he starts off in the practice squad. And if injuries do happen, the Dolphins will call him up. It's as simple as that. It's what's done, for the past couple of years. I'm going with this historical trend that, he's going to be on the practice squad. The Dolphins are going to stash him there. And if injuries do happen, maybe he makes the 53-man roster, since Will Fuller is on suspension that first week, and then they demote him back to practice squad. That's my assumption, and that's my impression of what could possibly happen.
Moving on in the wide receivers, and well said, guys. If we're looking at the total list, you got to put Mac Hollins in just the specialist category, because he's the gunner. It's been said to death, but I really want to see, and this is going to be coming from West Seminole 51, listing some wide receivers. Of course, with Jakeem Grant, he's a fringe guy, as good as he is at the punt return game. But we also have to talk about Malcolm Perry. And we're going to talk more about Kirk Merritt, because I think Kirk Merritt is going to be the wide receiver 1 today. That's at least in the amount of times that he plays in the series. I think he's going to be targeted as such, and he showed nice rapport with his quarterback in training camp. But I want to talk about Malcolm Perry, because he's a guy who is the same kind of player almost to me as Lynn Bowden. So what are we thinking about Malcolm Perry, Hussam?
Well, he's still got a lot of development to go. He's a former quarterback running back at Navy. Then they converted him to a wide receiver. He caught a touchdown pass against the Buffalo Bills, admittedly against soft coverage, where the Bills obviously did not care anymore. It was a blowout game. But Malcolm Perry has a lot of development to do. He needs to get better at route running. His hands are good, but not great. He's fast. He's more so of a gadget guy. And you already have a lot of gadget guys on this roster. So either, he gets cut or gets put onto the practice squad.
Chip?
Yeah. Now, before I say this, let it be known, I love Malcolm Perry. I think Malcolm Perry he's not blisteringly fast. He's very quick. he is very elusive, and it's interesting because people questioned his speed coming into the NFL, but if you look at all of his tape, you never saw him get caught from behind, which was really interesting. And I always go back to that when someone says this guy's not fast. I'm like, who caught him? If people don't catch from behind, you're not that slow. Do believe compared to 53, and I don't think there's room. But I really like the kid, and I hope he gets a chance to develop, even if not with the Dolphins, somewhere in the NFL.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. And, you got guys like Robert Foster, Kyle Loxley. So, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. And now, lastly, before we close the book on the wide receivers and get to my next favorite position group, probably my favorite position group, which is the defensive backs overall, we're going to talk about Preston Williams. Now, Williams, obviously, everyone is worried about the injury concerns as well as, the drop issues and what have you. And I'll take the drops as development. That's fine. He's still a young, undrafted free agent. But the injuries were rather odd. One on a punt return, which I don't think will ever happen again. And we're never going to see him return a punt again, hopefully. That would be ridiculous. And secondly, this weird injury of him diving into the end zone, having his foot twisted, and then having a lineman that will remain nameless jump in celebration on him. Now, we don't know exactly the extent of what did it to the foot. But what we do know is that he is PUP'd. So I think that if he makes the 53, what could happen is such. He makes the 53, then he could be IR'd for maybe a couple of weeks. This is all speculation. And if he does make the 53, get IR'd, then you have time for Lynn Bowden, Kirk Merritt to show up for 3 weeks, maybe create trade value, or give the Dolphins a reason to see what they have, maybe do a cut to make room for Preston. Also, what you might be able to do, and I want your opinions on this because we get to the other receiver we haven't spoken about. I think Devontae Parker is a trade candidate. As good as he is, I think he's the only receiver that creates value in terms of a decent draft pick that's usable, conditional fifth, maybe a fourth. I don't really know how much more you can get for an aging receiver who's known to be injured, but he's a very valuable receiver. The last 24 games he's played, he's a top 10 NFL wide receiver, believe that or not. So what are your thoughts, Hussam, about Devontae Parker as potentially a valuable piece for the Dolphins through his career? Because believe it or not, he's about 860 yards away from being the Dolphins' fifth all-time leading receiver, taking over for all of our guy, OJ McDuffie. He's basically the best friend to every Dolphin fan in this community. What a guy, and listen to him after the game and the fish tank on the post game. But yeah, Devontae Parker could finish his career as a top 5 Miami Dolphins receiver, Hussam.
That is crazy to hear, even with all those, injuries after he was drafted in 2015, I believe.
Yeah, well, he is the most longest tenured Dolphin. So yeah, he's been around.
I mean, that's crazy to think about it. And imagine if he was healthy all those years, maybe he could have been crept up into that top 3 receiving yards. And look, Devontae Parker is a known quantity when healthy. We already know what happens, with his hamstring, his ankle, and they're mainly, lower body injuries. He needs that to, run his routes and make those contested catches and jump. But, it wouldn't shock me, and I wouldn't be surprised if Devontae Parker, is possibly being shopped around the block there. I do think the Miami Dolphins are candidates, for a wide receiver trade. Somehow, some way, either between now to the trade deadline, could be Devontae Parker. He could bring in maybe, as high as a 3rd, 4th round pick for a wide receiver needy team. If the Miami Dolphins do, go ahead and stay with Devontae Parker, that's okay too. When healthy, he has a bit of chemistry with Tua Tagovailoa. You have him in a diverse wide receiver room with speedsters like Jalen Waddle, Albert Wilson. He could be your contested catch guy with or without Preston Williams. He can do better this season if he is staying, because I've noticed that, Devontae Parker does better when he's used out in motion for that free release. He's able to get those short area catches. He's able to find that soft zone as well, and intermediate. He's great too in the intermediate game, and I think that's where Tua will shine this year. So if there's no valuable trade compensation for Chris Greer and this organization, I would expect DVP to be a Dolphin, and who knows? Maybe he gets into that top 5 list.
Chip, what do you see happening?
No, I'm going to disagree with both of you here. And that's before I do that, I really want to send just comment very quickly on how awesome this front office is with keeping secrets and not letting anybody know what's going on. Going back to your Preston Williams conversation about how he got hurt, the most wonderful thing that I've seen is this front office keeps their mouths shut. They don't let anything get out about how things happen. We don't really know what happened with Preston Williams. We may never know. It may be locked away with the JFK stuff until we're all old and gray. And we might find out that Preston Williams was shot by someone on the grassy knoll. We don't know. But it's facetiousness aside, it's interesting that this entire front office is very tight-lipped about everything. And people who think they know things simply don't know any inside information. That being said, no, I do not think Devontae Parker gets traded. I think he is far too valuable to Tua in year 2 of Tua's development, because when Preston Williams is on, he is one of the best in the game. I will go on record saying that when he is fully healthy and he is on his game, he's one of the best there is in the game. You
could say that about Will Fuller too, Chip.
Of course you could.
A lot of people.
But we don't really know what's wrong with Will Fuller either. We don't know what's wrong with Devontae Parker right now. We don't know what's wrong with Will Fuller right now. I believe that they're simply not pressing either of them into action too much, again, because they're known quantities. You know what you've got with Will Fuller, and he's not playing week 1 anyway. So why rush him back?
I do want to mention something I've noticed about Will Fuller too, and my ATB guys also noticed this, so shout out to Tanner and Tyler Descendant there too. But he seems to have deleted his social media accounts as well. Maybe just to get prepared for the season, or something could be going on behind the scenes. Who knows? I don't want to flash so much drama around it, but just something noticeable that I've noticed about Will Fuller. And he hasn't practiced as much. Maybe they're healing him up a little bit. Maybe he's trying to get better, rehabbing. Or it might be crazy to say trade value for Will Fuller.
It's not the craziest thing. I mean, because you've seen them make kind of decisions and change their mind and kind of move pieces around, So honestly, I don't think anybody is quote unquote safe really in grand scheme of things in this regime. But, we're doing a lot of wide receiver talking, but I want to get to some other questions. And this was some really great coverage, no pun intended. So that kind of segues into who does the covering, and that's the defensive backfield. We know, thank God, Xavier Howard's not going anywhere. We don't need to go harp on Xavier Howard news. We could just be happy that he's a Dolphin. He's not playing today. Byron Jones is not playing today. And look, if Xavier Howard gets traded maybe next year, what have you, but at least there's a new deal in place that he's probably going to go through this season, a Dolphin, and then whatever happens next year, like anything else, is next year. So talking about this defensive backfield, I am looking forward to seeing Nick Needham is basically, and don't anyone go crazy, he's cornerback 1 today. He's legitimately cornerback 1 today because that's where he lines up behind Xavier Howard on the depth chart. So when you have Xavier and Byron Jones not playing, by my math, that's Nick Needham on one side, Noah Igbenogany on the other, and maybe have a Justin Coleman working in with Javon Holland in the slot. And then you got guys like Brandon Jones, Eric Rowe. Is Eric Rowe playing? I don't think I saw his name, but, we won't see a lot of Rowe. But we're going to see Brandon Jones, I'm sure. We're going to see, obviously Holland. I can't wait to see Trill Williams, as mentioned. So let's talk about your scouting at Trill, Hussam.
Sure, and I spoke to Trill's dad as well, and he's super excited for him to be on this Dolphins squad. He came in as a UDFA. He was signed with the Saints, and the Saints let him go. And the Dolphins organization snatched him right up. They snatched him right up because guess what, guys? He is versatile as any defensive back in this league. Can play outside, he can play inside, he can play strong safety, he can play free safety. It's just a matter of him being healthy and getting his opportunities in. Now, I do believe he'll play the safety position a little bit, more so towards, third and fourth quarter, where usually during the first week of the preseason, they're inserted in, to get those reps in, to see what they have in a player. He's better on man coverage. He's tall, athletic, very rangy of a player too. And I do think, he was underrated in that Syracuse squad as well. And I was talking to a couple of my draft people and scouting guys, but, don't be surprised to see him make a couple of plays too down the line. Obviously you won't have Byron Jones and Xavier Howard playing, but I'm looking at Noah Igbenogany, Trill Williams, and Javon Holland. I already know what kind of outside corner Nick Needham is. He's just getting his reps in. He's getting extra practice. We know how good of a player Nick Needham is and what he needs to improve on. I want to see if Javon Holland can translate all those practice picks and training camp picks into real-life simulations. If he picks up Justin Fields, that's going to be great. That's going to be great. He's such a young guy. And, I wouldn't have projected him to play free safety right after he came out of the draft, because that's not really what I saw from him at Oregon. He played primarily slot corner in 2019. He played a little bit of free safety and strong safety in 2018, but he was around the line of scrimmage a lot. But it seems to be that, the Dolphins brought in Devin McCourty to help train and coach Javon Holland, to help him understand this Brian Flores defense. He has all of the tools physically, but it's really about the mental game. Telling the corners where to line up, telling the linebackers what coverage they're playing in, who to look out for, making those checks as well. If Javon Holland can get it down by, let's say, week 7, week 8, we have a really, really good free safety on our hands. And that's going to be scary for this defense. It is going to be scary. I just can't put this into words how good of a player Javon Holland is.
And he's a smart, cerebral, captain quality kind of player. This is a guy who probably will wear a C on his jersey at one point in his career. And, I'm very excited to see where, if he's like, the quarterback of the defensive backfield, kind of, as you said, making the calls, whatnot. So we got to talk about Noah Igbenogany, athletic marvel, young talent. Stock is continuing to kind of act like an elevator. What are your thoughts, Chip, on Igbenogany, the plan, what you have been seeing and reading about him?
Well, I don't think there's any question about Noah Igbenogany's physical ability. That is something that jumps off the screen at you when you look at what he does. Where he's lacking so far is from what I've been able to see, and I'll never pretend to be a defensive back coach, but his technique, his ability to pick up to do pre-snap reads is lacking so far. But I think everything that he's missing so far are things that will arrive with work and with experience. Now, I don't think there's any question that when the Miami Dolphins drafted Noah Igbenogany, they were not drafting him to start in 2020 or even 2021. I believe their plan was a little farther down the road. And you can argue all you want, and I've had this conversation with plenty of people about, did Miami Dolphins pick Noah Igbenogany too early? It doesn't matter. They had the picks to spend. They said, we want this specific player for the schemes we're going to run, and they went and got him. You can argue about value all day long. They had plenty of picks. They got the guy they wanted. Now, do I think that had a little bit to do with making sure that X ended up on this team for at least another year? Yeah, I do. I think it had a little bit to do with that because they didn't want Noah Igbenogany starting. I think we will this year when he plays. I think we will see some spectacular plays, and I think we'll see him get burned a bit too. But that's the nature of learning the position. I'm looking forward to watching to see what he does today and throughout the season as he grows.
Yeah, it's progression. I mean, you got to develop players these days. I mean, I feel like that's like an art that's like, no one has any patience anymore. A guy plays 8 games and he's still learning the ropes. Cornerbacks need time to develop. I mean, if you look around the league, some of 4 or 5 years into an undrafted cornerback's career, there's a lot of really good players. There's a lot of really good cornerbacks who were drafted very, very late or not at all, who learned the game, learned the nuances. They train hard. It sounds familiar, but basically games like today are games where cornerbacks could have great games and make a name for themselves, or they could have absolutely lousy games, learn lessons, and then maybe come back after being cut, come back to a practice squad, and then end up being talked about as a cornerback one, like Nick Needham. I mean, that's a name that I'm just going to repeat over and over again because that's what you want. That's like the gem that you find rarely, much like how Preston Williams was on the offensive side, and much like how Trill Williams could be, much like how Kirk Merritt could be. Not a likelihood that both of them become gems, but these kids have to show up today. They literally can't make a mistake, Chip.
Nick Needham might be the poster child for development because he's done nothing but develop and get better under the tutelage of the Dolphins. He has clearly gotten a lot better as a boundary. He was originally a boundary corner. He played some slot, but I think boundary is where he's most natural. And I think he's a pretty darn good boundary corner at this point in time in his NFL career.
When you have a person who's coachable, which is a lot of the players on the Dolphins, because if you look at their team, many of them are not drafted high. Many of them were really kind of afterthoughts from other organizations as well, as Zach Sealer. He was not drafted. He was kind of a scrap heap guy that Chris Greer took a shot on. But, you mentioned poster child, and that's a terrific segue to our next guest coming on in, who is the poster child for all things South Florida sports and entertainment. Alex Dono, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing so well, and I apologize in advance if there are any hookups or any hiccups with my internet because it's so busy at my house. My sister and their kids are visiting, so I was booted out of the home office. How dare they? And relegated here to the wonderful patio with the wind swirling out there. So I hope I'm coming in visually and audibly loud and clear. But guys, nothing could keep me away from talking up the first preseason game. So hello to Jason, hello to Chip, hello to Hassam. I love all of you guys. And man, 23 minutes away from preseason football. I am beyond pumped, my friend. So I'm so excited to talk things up.
Well, I'll tell you, if you did get in trouble, you could blame me. It's my fault. I don't want you kicked out anytime, but I do appreciate
Oh no, it's my fault. Don't even worry. In fact, when I told my wife I was invited on by the great Jason Sarney, she felt bad because she's a big fan of your work.
Oh wow, I really appreciate that. So we'll talk more, and maybe I'll send some cupcakes or something. But I appreciate that very much. So talk to us about your thoughts on the wide receiver room. We really were doing a lot of deep diving into that, and then keep on going to the guys who cover them in practice, the corners and the safeties.
Well, man, I'm cautiously optimistic about the wide receiver room. There's a few guys, and we'll see who actually is on the team, once all the cuts are done. But there's some injury concerns there with Preston and Devontae, and Devontae is going to be on the team. We know that. It's just, how is he going to stay healthy all season long? Albert Wilson has been one of the stories of camp. I mean, especially the first week, the guy was absolutely lighting it up. And I love the fact that he and Tua have built so much chemistry so quickly. And if we can get, 17 games healthy out of Albert Wilson, I think that's going to be a treat because we haven't seen this guy play in so long. I mean, the opt-out from last year, the injuries prior to that, this is going to feel like a new signing. I mean, this is going to be a guy who's been on the team for like 3 or 4 years. But Albert Wilson, it's going to feel like a brand new Miami Dolphin. Will Fuller is another guy who's had an injury history. So it's like if you can keep everybody healthy, the Dolphins have one of the best receiving corps in the National Football League. And I'm very bullish on Jalen Waddle. I love that pick. That was, honestly, that was my number one receiving target heading into the draft because I think he's so fast and so dynamic. I think there was some recency bias that was working against Waddle because we didn't see him very much last year with Alabama because he was, he was hurt. People kind of forgot goes and wins the Heisman, and people kind of forget, just how good Jalen Waddle is. I think the Dolphins made the right pick there. And for he and Tua to start connecting again, it's going to be like riding a bike. So I love the receiving core. I love the defensive secondary. I mean, as far as the corners go, I felt like it was such a blessing that they were able to work things out with Xavier Howard, because things for a few days, they felt very ugly. Nick Needham has been stepping up. We know what we get from Byron Jones, and it's good things. I hope Noah Igbenogany can really figure things out and becoming more consistent, because I don't want to be looking at Noah and thinking, oh, this is like a regret, and this is a guy that we missed on in the draft. So I want to see him step up. And then in the defensive secondary, guys, the one who has me buzzing and has everyone talking, who I think is going to be, even more so than Jalen Waddle or Jalen Phillips, I think the steal of the draft is going to be Javon Holland. I think that's the guy we're going to look at and say, this is one of the next great safeties in the NFL. I mean, to hear and see him first training camp as a rookie has everybody talking. He's intercepting every quarterback the Bears throw out there in joint practices. And he doesn't feel like a guy heading into his rookie year. I think Javon Holland, to me, is really going to make Dolphin fans forget about Minkah Fitzpatrick when we traded him a couple of years ago. I think he's even going to go above and beyond replacing Minkah. So there's a lot to love. And guys, anytime that I start thinking about and talking about the depth at most positions, not every position, but I really think about what a successful rebuild this is looking like, right? I mean, the roster from 3 years ago that was basically completely blown up and rebuilt after Adam Gase was let go, and how quickly Chris Greer has been able to reassemble this team. They have a lot to prove, but when it comes to depth at virtually every position, we're getting to a point where we have that.
Depth. You mentioned depth, and that's a key word, because a lot of people kind of wonder why you draft another this, another that. And then you look back 3-4 years ago, even pre-Flores, good teams suffer 2-3 injuries, and then all of a sudden everyone's complaining about lack of depth. Reason being, they're splurging $50 million on this dangly piece of free agent. They're splurging $30 million on this dangly free agent. This regime is not doing that. They're developing young talent and taking risks. So, I'm very excited to see that continued development. Are there any players outside of the wide receiver and cornerbacks or safety room that you're kind of circling today to watch?
Ooh, well, I got to take a look back at that inactives list or potential inactive list. Like, are we going? Because I want to make sure before I talk this guy up, is Myles Gaskin going to play today? I want to make sure.
Yep.
So, all right, I'm getting the nods on that one.
Yep.
I think that this guy is very under the radar. Because if you look at and obviously again this is a big theme, because I said the same thing about the wide receiving core. If Gaskin can stay healthy for a reasonable amount of time, if you look at his per touch numbers, his per carry numbers, and his actual production, I think he's going to be ready to break out, assuming the offensive line improves. And with how many second-year guys and even rookies there are on that O-line, you've got to think the trajectory is going to be up. And also, when it comes to the running game, having as much speed as the Dolphins have at the receiving core, that's going to open things up inside the box. You're not going to be able to stack the box against the Dolphins. So, and this is not just today. He's probably going to get a few reps today, but just for the entire season, like Myles Gaskin is a guy. You can tell I'm a nerd for offensive players, because I'm one of these. Omar Kelly would call me a ball watcher. Like I'm one of these ball watchers. I geek out for the offensive players. I geek out for running backs. I think Myles Gaskin is going to be one of the more undervalued guys in the NFL, because I want the Dolphins to do more at the running back position, especially in the draft, sure, but then people also talk about Myles Gaskin like he's chopped liver, and I think he could have a really big year this year.
I agree wholeheartedly. I'm going to bring in Hangout Alex. I'm sure you're okay until kickoff to hang with us.
Kickoff, yeah.
You're the man. I'm going to bring in Tanner Elliott, and as we talk about Myles Gaskin, and hello to Tanner, I'm going to mention that when he played 11 games last year, Gaskin averaged 97 scrimmage yards a game. That's top 10 in the league. And also something that blew my mind when I was doing some fantasy research about Gaskin is that of running backs with 30 receptions or more last year, tied for number one in the league in yards per catch with 9.5 yards with David Johnson, of all people. But yes, he did tie for number one in the league for all receptions of running backs, 30 yards or more, 30 receptions or more to qualify with this, 9.5 yards per catch. He had a couple of big plays, but that's all part and parcel of it. So Tanner, welcome, sir, and talk to us about your expectations. You're a running back guy. Thoughts about Myles Gaskin? How you doing, Tanner?
Gaskin, what's going on? So, it's like Alex said, it all depends on the offensive line. Gaskin can only do what the offensive line does. Any running back, for that matter. I mean, if the line's not, bringing holes, then Gaskin can't run anywhere. Like you said, he averages 9.5 yards per catch. Some of that's inflated off the 156-yarder against the Raiders week 15. But I mean, other than that, Gaskin's a pretty good player. I do enjoy watching him play. I will admit I wanted Najee Harris in the draft. I mean, who didn't really? Well, I think him and Ahmed is going to be a good combo, especially bringing in Malcolm Brown in the goal line, which is what he got a lot of touches in against the Bears in the joint practice, the one joint practice we had. So I think the combination of those three is going to be probably the best running back trio we've had in a long time, probably in about 10 years, maybe longer.
And that's what the Dolphins, where they excel historically. The years that they do well are the running back tandems or trios, minus the couple of years of Ricky Williams because he was a freak of nature. But, of course, you had a Wildcat duo with Ronnie and Ricky. You had the perfect backfield with Mercury, Kick, and Zonk. And, you look at some other even, back in the mid-'90s, you had your Keith Byers, Bernie Parmalee, Terry Kirby kind of combos. So this is kind of what that's setting up like. And Chip, I know you've seen a lot of those names that I've mentioned. Hussam, you have not. Tanner as well, but Alex, you too. I want to get your two opinions on some of the better teams historically from the Dolphins, kind of setting up like this kind of build. Let's just take away the quarterback just yet. Just look at everything else. But Chip and then Alex, what do you guys got with that kind of comparable?
Well, no, and let's not forget about Lamar Miller either, because Lamar Miller had a pretty darn good Dolphins tenure as well. I think what the Dolphins are setting up is they're going to have a running back by committee. Let me rephrase that. I think they would like to have a running back by committee as long as it works. And whether it's mixing in Malcolm Brown early, getting short yards, wearing down a defense to the point where you're going to have a Myles Gaskin be a lot more effective in late games and start busting out some bigger runs. And let's not forget about Jared Dokes either. I think I'd like to see some more of him this preseason, see what he brings to the table. But as far as a comparison, I think we're in a more of an age now where you're going to have a lot more of mixing in different running backs and different styles. What I'm really looking forward to seeing is how the new offensive coordinators utilize them. I think it's going to be really interesting through the preseason. I want to see the schemes they run, how they mix in the different backs. I don't think they're going to show their hand completely, but I'm really looking forward to seeing mixing and matching the power versus the cutting ability and the vision of Myles Gaskin.
With all due respect to some of the great Dolphins teams of yesteryear, I grew up watching Dan Marino. I was not around for the perfect season, but I've seen enough documentaries and NFL films that I kind of feel like I was there. I don't necessarily think the next great Dolphins team is going to resemble any of the previous ones. I think this is going to be a bit of a Frankenstein's monster. It's going to kind of combine a lot of the principles of, and I hope I'm talking upside here, that if we do see, great Dolphins teams yet to come, I knock on wood on that, it's going to be a bit of a Frankenstein's monster between a lot of the things that Brian Flores learned from Belichick. And also, if we really get success out of Tua, it's going to be a lot of RPO. So it's not really going to look like some of the great Dolphins teams of the past. And I love what Chip was saying about running back rotations, and that really ties back to the Belichickian thing where you're going to use a lot of different running backs. It's going to frustrate fantasy football players because you may not necessarily be able to predict which guy's going to be the one to carry the load this week. Like it could be one week, it could be Myles Gaskin getting 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then the next week he's got 3 carries and it's the Salvon Ahmed show. Like you're not necessarily going to be able to predict the way that goes down, and I hope defensively, we see, the trend of last year continue with a lot of turnovers and a lot of big plays, because you can't always count on that being a consistent thing. Sometimes there's rhythm and a little bit of luck that comes into a guy like Xavier Howard, who I love, but do I think he's going to get double-digit interceptions 2 years in a row? Probably not. I mean, that's something that doesn't happen every single season, but I think developing more consistency on that defense and building up the pass rush the way that they are, because I think Jalen Phillips is going to end up being an awesome player for this team for years to come. I mean, I think we're writing hopefully the next chapter of great Dolphins football with a nod to what Shula was able to do back in the day. But I think, and I shudder to say this, but it may end up looking a little bit more of what Belichick did for the last 20 years.
I
on.
actually like Alex's point too, and I'll give you a little bit of backstory of how Alex got to this point too, and I'll give you my analysis. But great analysis, Alex, and I loved what you said.
Thank you.
I do not think the Miami Dolphins are following that previous model either. We saw Brian Flores try to follow that model in order to, get that running game going. Just run the ball, power, West Coast, zone scheme, running game in order to get this team going. It didn't happen in 2018. I'm sorry, it didn't happen in 2019. It didn't happen in 2020 either. And Brian Flores, I think he learned from his mistakes and said, you know what? Let's change it. Let's change this entire offensive dynamic around. Let's not try to pound the ball so much to get this offense going. We know Tua's strengths. This team is not going to be, running the ball to set up the pass. And I've said it multiple times on the Dolphins ATV podcast and Twitter Spaces as well. This is a team that is going to pass first in order to run the ball. The offense is built this way. You have a lot of wideouts that can get deep, that can get intermediate, that can take things to the house. And that'll basically will make the opposite defense go away from the line of scrimmage, which opens up a little bit of holes in the run game. You can get easy 2-3 yards as well. RPO, you don't see a lot of people in the box. And off to Miles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, Jared Dokes, Malcolm Brown, whoever your running back is, even Patrick Laird or Tua can even take it for 4 or 5 yards. He's got a little bit of that wiggle. He's got a little bit of that scramble ability as well. And this isn't going to be your ground and pound team. This is going to be a pass first. It's going to be a heavy attacking passing offense as well. And I think we saw glimpses of that at training camp. We saw it in joint practices as well. But again, it is all going to be up to this offensive line. Austin Jackson looks so much better. He looks more powerful. His feet look faster. And, last season, I believe he gave bone marrow to his sister who was needing it. And that might have weakened him a little bit. Robert Hunt has the makings of a future Pro Bowl guard. Michael Dieter, he's developing very nicely. Who would have thought that Dieter would have, been the starter at center so far a couple months ago? We were all clamoring for Miami to draft a center like Creed Humphrey or Quinn Myers. I'm a little bit concerned about the left guard debacle between Liam Eichenberg or Solomon Kinley. I know Kinley's not the best pass blocker, and I think Miami demoted him to get his technique much better and to put that hunger and that fire into him. This organization does a lot of things strategically, and if Kinley can show in this game that, he's got the technique better for that pass blocking unit, I think he could, solve that left guard hole again. Now, as for right tackle, it's going to be Jesse Davis or Liam Eichenberg. We know Eichenberg is out with injury. Hunter Long as well. Barry Jackson confirmed it. He's out today with the knee injury. So Jesse Davis, he's not the worst option, but he's not the best option either. He's very versatile. He can hold it down until he can't hold it down. So I'm going to be watching that blind side. I'm going to be watching that right side. If Robert Hunt can help Jesse Davis a little bit until he can get through his reads and give his ball out, and the running game can be even better than what it was on the right side, there's a little bit of hope for this offense. There is a glimmer of hope, but let's not hesitate. We have to see this continuously happen throughout the preseason into the regular season. You're on mute, Jason.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you,
There
buddy.
you go.
Man.
Second time. That won't happen again. Won't be a third. But I'm glad that you brought in the offensive line. We'll talk about that before I forget. For all the live listeners, by the end of the show, I'm doing a fun little new thing this year. Me and my son, we've been getting into the card trading game again. And, it's fun. It's enjoyable. We're having a ball. But I'm also doing some goodwill. I have a ton of Dolphin fun stuff. And as my thank you for all you listeners and viewers, readers out there, be doing some fun stuff throughout the season. So the first one for everyone in the chat, just give me a fun reason and we'll all kind of vote on it. It's another Tua card. It'll be this fun little card here. It's one of those Panini guys. I don't know. Do whatever you want with it. But you Twitter DM me whenever we decide the winner by the end of this show. And I'll send it to you. Got a couple of things coming out. So fun things on the way. So let's get back to the offensive line. Alex, you're our resident guest. So do you have a picture perfect offensive line in your head?
Overall, no. I'm a little bit concerned, like Hassam said, about the Robert Hunt experiment, but I am
Solomon Kinley, not Robert Hunt experiment. Solomon Kinley
experiment. Yeah, fair enough. I love Austin Jackson at left tackle. So that to me is the guy for all the reasons that Hassam outlined. I think he's going to be taking a big step forward this year. I think people were sleeping on him a little bit too much. I'm still a little bit hesitant to feel so confident about Michael Dieter because I feel like I've been a little bit burned by his development or lack thereof before. So hopefully this is the time that he figures it out. And I do think there's some depth there because, I like the fact that you talk about underrated guys. I mean, Jesse Davis, who's just been the utility player. I think he's been underrated in the past, and I think every hole that he's been asked to fill in before, I like it. So I think I'm probably a little bit higher on the offensive line than some people. And I go back to the joint practices that they had in Chicago. I wasn't there in person, but by all accounts, something that I liked hearing was they really got smacked in the mouth the first day. They showed improvement later in the first day, and they looked considerably better the second day. So the fact that they have ability to adjust and adapt, I think is going to be important because, like Tanner Elliott pointed out, whether we're talking about the running game or we're talking about Tua's development, it all starts with them. If they fail this year, no one else can succeed.
Let's build off that, Tanner. And I want to get more stuff out of you since you just came in. And you're brutally honest when you give your takes, and I appreciate that. And I know you had some takes on Kirk Merritt, so we'll backtrack to that after the offensive line speak. Tanner,
So,
you there?
What was the question about the offensive line? Yeah, was it?
No, just
was it
in
about the
terms of
offensive
what
line?
your five might be. Do you have a five in your head, just to piggyback off of kind of what Alex was talking about in your
No,
previous point?
I want the best five. I want the
Doesn't
best
matter in
five.
your mind
I don't
who
care
plays
who it
where.
is. I don't care if Jesse Davis is at center. If he's the best center on the team, put him out there. I mean, I have no words. I have no words what to say anymore about the offensive line. I mean, they did improve last year. I will admit to that. But I just think in order for our run game to be where we need it as a team, I just think that they need to improve as a whole unit. And it's not just, you know what I mean? It's not just I know Hunt's a lock of guard and Austin Jackson is a lock of tackle. But center's a question mark. Dieter, we haven't seen him play in a year. I think he played 2019. He started 15 games. So, that's a big question mark for me. Kinley was on the third team offensive line 4 or 5 days ago. Like, that's crazy. And now he's starting? I don't buy it. I don't buy that at all. And of course, a fight for the last tackle spot. You got the rookie Liam from Notre Dame and Jesse Davis. I mean, both those options are fine for me. It's going to really come down to who is the best pass blocker, who's the best run blocker. Who I think athleticism also plays a big factor into it because the RPO scheme we plan on running.
You're absolutely right about the scheme. And Hussam, you made great points about how the pass is going to set up the run. So, we have just a couple of minutes until we're approaching kickoff. We're about a couple of minutes to the top of the hour. So let's get back to what you want to talk about quickly, Tanner, about Kirk Merritt.
Kirk Merritt, everyone knows him. He's kind of like the fan favorite that's never played or even have a catch. He has a target for the Dolphins. Insane speed. He ran like a 4.35 in the 40s pro day. He had like a 40-inch vert. I know he did a 65-inch vertical standing, like a box jump, which is absolutely insane as well. But he's been, putting it all. He's been having a great show this training camp. He's running with the, mostly the third team. He's been progressing into the second team, first team. So, I mean, good for him, but we've never seen him play against actual ever. We've never seen him play anything other than special teams. So I know the receiver room is pretty crowded right now. We have about 6, 7, 8 guys that can probably, make the team that are on the conversation. But I think it'll be interesting to see if Merritt can, show flashes from his college film. If you go look at his film, he's one of the most athletically gifted players in college football. Doesn't matter if, anything really, Power 5 or not. He went to Arkansas State. He was a transfer from Oregon. He played running back there. So I just think if Merritt shows out in these next 3 games in the preseason, I think that we're going to see some, surprise cuts. Maybe even, Isaiah Ford, who some people may think he may make the team now. He may not make it anymore.
You make good points. And, I do have on in the corner here, we got the pregame, and Jalen Waddle is fielding punt returns in warm-up. So that's something to watch for, which is, you know what? I like that because it also makes Jakeem Grant, I'm sorry to say, expendable. Because, you look at some of the other wide receivers to get drafted in the first round and start their career as kick returners or punt returners. Look how O.J. McDuffie started his career. His first touchdown was against the Colts as a punt returner. He hurdled over somebody. And 2 years later, that's when he became the third down guy. So I have no problem if the Dolphins could flip a Grant for a 6th or 7th rounder or whatever. Jalen Waddle starts off as your punt returner and then, work him in. But anyway, looking forward to getting started in a couple of minutes. So going around the room before we officially get underway here game-wise. Alex, as much as I appreciate you coming on, I hope this is not the last time.
No, it's not.
Thank God. I hope you get back in to hang out with the family and enjoy your day. It looks pretty nice out there. How's the weather?
It's windy and cloudy. So I feel like this is the proverbial calm before the storm in quite a literal way. I think I'm good for about another I think in about the next 5 minutes it's going to start raining cats and dogs here, but it's good for now. It's actually feels nice because it's not 100 degrees outside. It's so windy.
It's beautiful. And you say the metaphorical calm before the storm. Hopefully that is what this year is before the Dolphins really kind of go for a dynastic approach for the next decade here.
I agree. And a huge thanks again for having me. And it's nice catching up with everybody. I love all you guys' work, and I appreciate Assam because I see him pop in a lot to our streams, and he is a true legend among men. And yeah, I want to let people know that I do streams every day. We talk some Dolphins. Actually, we talk a lot of Dolphins, especially now with the season coming up. Some Hurricanes, a lot of Miami Heat. On the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. I do a daily show. It's called Dono Daily, 12 noon to 1 p.m. So you kind of get your South Florida fix there, and I really enjoy doing it. And anytime you guys can pop in and watch, I appreciate it. And I'd love to get all of you guys on my show as well at certain points, so I will be reaching out.
That sounds great, Alex. Me and you should do like a Die-Hard Christmas Eve watch party.
Yes, dude. Wouldn't that be great? Like a live.
I'd be there. I'd be onto it too. I watch it every single Christmas.
It's the quintessential Christmas movie.
Yeah.
We all know this. Conversation.
It sure is.
Day. But thank you so much. Enjoy the game, and Finn's up to you.
You too. Finn's up to you guys. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers, Alex. Be well, sir. Chip, let us know exactly what's going on in your world before we settle in and watch some Dolphin football against the Bears.
Well, we've been doing some articles up on PhinManiacs. Just got one up, recapping. Did a little, for lack of a better term, it's a puff piece we did on PhinManiacs about the hesitation to hope. On the site, it seems to have gotten some good responses. Thank you for those who gave feedback on it. I'm just looking forward today to seeing what I can't wait. I know we've discussed pretty much every position category. I want to see what well, let me put it this way, what the co-offensive coordinators can put together. It's not a very common thing. I want to see how it works. I have confidence that this year's offensive scheme is going to be a lot better than last year's. I believe last year's was designed for Ryan Fitzpatrick. It's not to say anything bad about Chan Gailey. The man is a legend in the industry, but I think it's time to move forward with what we've got coming up, and I'm looking forward to some fireworks this year.
I wanted to say one last quick thing regarding the tight end usage, and George Gotsey was the tight end guru last year, co-offensive coordinator. best tight end room production in Miami history. 91 catches, 1,061 yards, and 11 TDs by the group combined, mainly Mike Gesicki. But Durham Smythe also had 26 or 25 catches, caught 90% of his looks. That's maybe by design. So, Chip, appreciate your work. You're really just a terrific writer. You're editor-in-chief of PhinManiac. So you enjoy the Pennsylvania weather and your day as you're watching the game today.
Thank you, sir. And fins up, baby.
It's game time already. 2 of the Dolphins are up first.
Tanner, take us out of here with what you're working on right now.
I don't know. I'm just looking forward to watching the game. I'm
want to watch the game.
I'm waiting for the
Jakeem Grant is returning.
I'm just really looking forward to. No, Psalms, please stop. I'm just.
It's literally right there on the
really
screen in
focused
front of me.
on who makes the team. I'm just really
Tanner's
focused on
like
who's making the team. The 53.
Last time at Ridgemont High, you gotta love Tanner. You're fantastic, brother. But listen, you do some great work on PhinManiacs. I love your analysis, your brutal honesty on your player analysis. So keep it up, enjoy the game, and don't work too hard over there.
Thank you.
Hussam, what about you? I know you
on.
don't sleep these days.
You already know where to find me. Check out my Twitter at Hussam Patel. I write for PhinManiacs. I write for Dolphins A2B, and I'm the editor for the City of Miami on the Around the Block Network. So go ahead and check me out there. Check out PhinManiacs. Check out Around the Block Network as well. And fins up, everybody.
Thank you, Hussam, and thank you for everyone listening. We're really kind of minutes away from getting underway. We're literally about to kick off. So I'm going to let everyone enjoy the game. Thank you to all the listeners, readers, viewers, and hit me up on Twitter. I'm going to give away that Tua card, which is here. And right now, we are officially underway on the Miami Dolphins 2021 preseason. They are about to take the field. Tua Tagovailoa coming on the field for the Miami Dolphins. So fins up, everybody. We'll see you out on PhinManiacs.com. I'll be on Twitter, and I'm bringing Patreon into the fray here for game day news, inside info, prop betting advice, fantasy advice. So a lot of fun stuff ahead. So fins up. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody. Take care.